Well, welcome back to another episode of the Cameras and Coffee podcast. I'm sitting here today with Kayla Dean from the Literary Co., and we're going to talk about irresistible website copy. Now, I know in the wintertime, that's usually when photographers start talking about updating some things. So I just wanted to say welcome, Kayla, to this episode. I can't wait to dive in.
Thank you. I'm so
Oh.
excited to be here.
Yes. So in episode 23, I talked with Josephine Franzen and we talked about website design. But today we're going to talk about the copy that goes in the websites. So Kayla's an expert in that. She is a writer and we're going to talk all about this. But before we dig in, Kayla, let's kind of talk about your backstory and what got you into copywriting. So kind of tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I always tell people I accidentally started a business. Because I don't have a business background. My degrees are in English literature. So,
Mm,
I was like, I really want to like freelance write from home. I really don't want to be a starving artist. I really want to make money off of
mm,
my writing. And so, I got out of grad school and I was like, oh, what do I want to do now? I had
yeah.
experience in all different types of writing and I was trying to figure out like where I wanted to go, like what I was really interested in. And that's when I
Mm,
found copywriting. And I just kind of started like absorbing everything I could and learning everything I could and, trying my hand at it, just practicing a lot. And I started my business. So this is my 6th year in business. And I went from really
love
being
that.
like, oh, is this a business? I don't know. I guess like people are like paying me or something. And it just was like, I always tell people I accidentally started a business because it
I
wasn't
love
really
it.
like planned, I guess. And then once I finally incorporated and became an LLC, I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is real now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Start filing taxes. I'm like, yeah, this is real. And, it just really like built from there. I really found that I love working with creatives.
Mm,
I work with a lot of people in the wedding industry. I love working with photographers. I also love working with like creative service providers,
yeah.
educators, people who do, like digital products and stuff like that too. I just love, the small business community and like what it brings to the world, like how much joy and depth and value there is there. And so, the longer I've gone on, the more I'm like, I just really love working with small business and the spirit of small business. And, there's just something really unique about running your own business. Sometimes it's really
Yeah.
hard, but
For
it's
sure.
like, on those hard days where you're like, is it worth it to, keep
Mm,
going? You think you're like, yeah, I really like working for myself. I love being my own boss. I love the clients I get to work with and the things that I get to help them with, like having a real impact on people's businesses is
mm,
really amazing. So in the past, like almost 6 years now, because I'm like in my 6th year of business. I started this in like summer 2018.
mm.
I've worked with over like 150 clients. I've
Wow.
written so many websites and,
Wow.
you know, sales copy and all that good stuff. So it's been like definitely like quite a ride, but very worth it too.
I always love the question when someone asks, like, when did you officially start your business?
Yeah.
So when would you say, like, when did you consider yourself a business? Because when you're like, I accidentally stumbled on, was it like when you filed your LLC? Was it before that? Like, what? Tell us about that.
So I started in like the summer of 2018. I didn't even have a website or anything like that. In that fall, I was kind of, starting to get clients. I didn't even I launched my website in like I think January of 2019. And even from there, it took a while for me to feel like I was a business. Like I was like, oh, people are paying me. What? Like it was just still like such a novel concept. Like the
Yeah.
I was just so green back then. I would say once it took me like over a year after I like kind of like started
Mm,
to actually file my LLC. And then I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'm a business. So it took a while for it to sink in. I think I had a lot of like imposter syndrome, like, oh
Oh,
man,
yeah.
I was like really a business. And yeah, it's like, it's crazy too, because I feel like, I'm one of the ones that started my business like pre-COVID. A lot
Hmm.
of people came up, during COVID and like, right after that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I was telling someone this story the other day. I went from like, I was like, I work from home. And people were like, what? Like, what is that? And it was so weird to them. And then after COVID, it's like, oh yeah, oh, we all work from home. Yeah, that's
Oh
nothing
yeah.
new. Like people I knew who
Hmm.
thought it was really strange are like, oh yeah, we totally get it now. So that was a funny
Yeah,
shift. I feel like there's been a lot of like shifts in the world, like, and
for sure.
you know,
Major
since I got
pivots.
started.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even feel like it hasn't even been that long, but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'm curious to know when you said you were like doing it greenwise, like what did that look like? So if you didn't have a website, like how were people finding you?
You know, a lot back then. I was like in Facebook groups a lot. I
Mm,
feel like
yep.
you know, it's so funny because I feel like the conversation I've been having with people a lot lately is how things have been changing so much. Things were so
Yeah.
different for me back then. Like the strategies I used then are like totally different than the ones I use
Oh
now.
yeah.
Yeah, back then I was like in Facebook groups a lot more. Like people were finding me there. I was finding them there. And then the next year after that, like as I was getting my business really up and running, I used a lot of like Google ads were working really well for
Mm,
me back then.
yeah.
Um, you know, there, yeah, it's just changed so much. Like during COVID, mid COVID, after COVID, and then
Yeah.
even now, like in, you know, whatever phase that we're in now, it's like I feel like I've seen so many shifts, almost like more than I expected to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm finding there are more service, like outsourcing services now where people were like, how can I work from home? So it's kind of like one of those things where now you feel like you're in a mass of things, but you had like this client base ahead of time. So you kind of almost had a leg up in the industry, which is so nice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Oh my goodness. I love how that unfolds and it's kind of like stumbling upon something you didn't expect. And so, yeah, I love that. Um so what made you get into website copywriting specifically? Was it more like there were people asking you to do that? Was it more like, "Hey, I can help you do this?" Like let's kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just seeing there was like just such a need for it, and that has like
Mhm.
continued to be consistent like the whole time I've been in business. I would
Okay.
say as a copywriter, like I write a lot of different things, but I would say like website copywriting has always been that thing that consistently like people always need that.
Mhm.
It's just so important to the functioning of a business. Like it's funny sometimes I'll see like I saw a post in a group yesterday where someone was like, "How can you justify paying for web design and copywriting and paying this much?" And I'm just like, I mean, that's like the price they listed, I was like, man, that's like the minimum. Like I know people
Yeah.
that charge double that. Not because they just can, but just because of the value of it, like the value that
Yeah.
you get out of it, the work that goes into it, how important it is. It isn't just like writing this random thing one time. It's like
Mhm.
your website is like just such an asset for your business. I think that sometimes we think of it as an expense, but it's like if you think of it as like your website, I mean, over the time that it's live, or yeah, it's a whole lifetime. It's like it could make you hundreds of thousands of dollars
Oh
in your
yeah.
business. And it's like, you know, it might feel like, oh, why am I paying someone, you know, quote this much to write it? But it's like it really is just like so important. I find like most of the time, like people are making their investment back like with, you know, one or two clients. It's like
Oh
they
yeah.
book that, and then it's like from then on there it's like that copy is like making them money like again and again and again, because when people are landing on it, it's like those people feel like they're in the right place. So I just find that like it is just so consistently like important. Like arguably maybe there's some other areas in your business that you can kind of sleep on and be like, oh, I'll get
Mm,
to that when I have time, but your
yeah.
website isn't one of those things. Like anyone in 2020
Oh
twenty
yeah.
twenty four, I almost said 2023. Anyone that's saying, yeah, it's like, yeah, anyone that's saying that you don't need a website in 2024, I'm like, where, what, like where are you
Yeah.
getting clients? Because I think that's just such bread and butter. I mean, especially as like online, you know, for online service providers, but even for like, you know, brick and mortar, or, you know, for
Yeah.
photographers that are working in a specific local area, it's like, how are people going to find you? I mean, even if they are finding you on Instagram, you know, you want to have a place where people can, you know, close the
Yeah.
deal. You can get that inquiry on that inquiry form, and you can move people to the next step instead of, you know, having to like talk in DMs and have this like, oh, I don't know,
Yep.
I'll think about it. You know, it's like you're just going to get people that are more serious.
I do find that a lot because when I'm blogging for like weddings and stuff, I like to tag all the vendors in there. And a lot of times when I do it from my blog, I like to tag their website. When I'm on like Instagram, I tag their Instagrams. And I'm finding more and more in the wedding industry, like those who are like makeup artists and hairstylists, like they don't have websites. They just have like their Instagram. And I'm just like, that's such a missed opportunity of how someone can find you. And I do understand like a lot of them are freelancers and they're doing this on the side of from where they're based at. But even like a simple landing page somewhere, like finding a landing page and doing that for someone to find you online would be so huge for them. And I feel like it's such a missed opportunity they don't realize. But I'm not going to sit there and try and educate them on it, but it is something where I'm like, oh, you guys are missing so much. Which I guess, how are people finding you? Are they finding you through uh, social media more or what? But I, of course, think like coming back to that website, that's my first thing is I'm like searching on Google, like, where is this person? Um, and yeah, that's what's going to help you. But yeah, let's kind of go into your like auditing services and specifically for photographers. I want to kind of dig into like what are the things that you're finding a lot of that photographers are doing that might not necessarily be beneficial for them, but what are you seeing a lot of?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm seeing a lot of like, something I've seen like in my time being a copywriter is like different like types of writing styles being like really
Mm.
trendy in certain industries, or, people
Oh
will
yeah.
find like certain kinds of like, maybe like really prominent businesses or influencers or something like that. And it might be, I don't know, maybe at least to me, I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I feel like I can kind of see this influence coming through here and not necessarily in a good way. Like sometimes I see on people's photographer websites, like I think it's really great to be, really chill and show your personality. Like, there's no reason to be like stuffy or stiff or anything like that. Like be yourself. I think that that really, really helps. But something I kind of find is like people might take that and be like, hey, so glad you're here, with like 20 Ys. Hey, so glad you're here. I like snacks. Like, come to my website. Like
Yes.
I do see that on photographer websites, like more like it surprises me how much I see that, like a lot
Yeah.
of that, kind of like super, super chill style, which I think is great. I think it just maybe is a balance to strike. I think when done right, you can include the right details and make it very like client
Mhm.
focused. Like I think sometimes photographer websites can make it very much about like the person, like the photographer. And while I think that's great, I think people do want to know about you. Like unfortunately, I think the advice that's been bandied about a lot is like, you know, your website's not about you. And so people go, am I allowed to have an about page? Am I allowed to speak about myself? And I'm like, yes,
Yes.
so you totally are. Like, please do that. We want to do that. Like anytime I have people that are like, should I have an about page? Do people even care? I'm like, yes, they care. Like, yes,
Mhm.
let's have one, but I think, on some of the other pages of the site where it's very like, especially like on the services page where we really want to be selling them like on the experience, or, what kind of different collections or offers that you have, sometimes I see people like not kind of getting into the details enough, or
Mm.
being really minimal with text. I'm not saying like
Yeah.
minimal copy like can't work, but I think sometimes if you're not using every word to like its most impact,
Mhm.
sometimes like that copy may not like really be doing anything. It may not be like directing them where you want them to go, and it might feel
Mhm.
a little bit incomplete. So there are just, yeah, those are some things that I see.
Well, it's crazy because I think in the last 5 years, I know when I was doing some education, when online education was becoming such a prominent thing, there was a lot of pushing, like, you know, and I think it still is, where the only thing that sets you apart as a photographer really is you. Like anybody could do the same thing you're doing, which is kind of like, but at the same token, it's like, yeah, put more of you out there. But then I find like in that shift, there was a lot of um, ways where people were like, this is a cookie cutter thing to do. Like, here's what you should be talking about. And a lot of it I think was like templates people were selling too. Like they're
Yeah.
like, here's a template. Um, and so they're just like putting it based on like the same thing, but talking about themselves,
It's
you
like
know?
Mad Libs.
Yes, basically, I feel like it was a lot of that. And I feel like we're in another shift where it's like, let's just be like, you know, real. Like, let's not be this cookie cutter thing.
Yeah.
I feel like there is something to be said about copywriting and how it can be your own voice, be you. But it is one of those things where you do see a lot where people are still struggling to be like, I don't want to be part of my business, like my face in the business right now. And it is like that catch 22 going back and forth. Um, but yeah, I think it's funny when you mention like, I love snacks. Like that, I remember when that was a huge thing. I'm like, I
And
love
lattes.
coffee. And then everyone's like, stop talking about how much you love coffee, which is funny because this podcast is called Cameras and Coffee. But it was like, yeah, every photographer loves coffee, you know? Um, so like what really makes you stand out and make that your prominent thing. But
Mm.
yeah, it's it's just interesting when you notice those trends across the board. Um,
Yeah.
so let's kind of talk more about like the copywriting aspect. So like specifically for photographers, a lot of times we like to focus a lot on our work and our images and we want them to speak for themselves, but kind of talk about like why can't like throwing galleries out there speak for themselves when it comes to your website?
Yeah, I would say it's because, I love that copy can like, I mean, it can sell, it can give context, it can educate. Like there's a lot of things that it can do. And I think that I think that's the biggest thing I hear or see is like just letting, visuals speak for themselves. And I mean like super beautiful images where you
Mhm.
look and go, "Oh my gosh, clearly this person is like so talented and so good at this." And like, who wouldn't want like beautiful images like this? But yeah, I think it's like you said when you were saying that like you are a big differentiator. And I think we hear this all the time and we're like, yeah, okay, whatever. That sounds really, that sounds nice and everything, but is
Mhm.
that really true? And it's like, no, it really is. I mean, that's why like when I work with clients, I always go through that like discovery process to really learn about them and
Mhm.
their business. Like something I find a lot is people tend to like kind of bury the lead and they don't really know that like the thing that they're like putting way over here that they're like, oh, I don't know, like it doesn't seem important, might be like, oh wow, okay, we need to lead with that, we need to have that be like top billing, we need to have that be more of a primary focus. And then once they see that shift, they go, wow, I didn't realize I wasn't speaking to that, and that's
Mm.
something I could be speaking to. So it's really looking and trying to find those things and looking past like the obvious things. um and sometimes we try to do, I think like what we were talking about with the trends, like saying, oh, I like lattes or snacks or something like that. I think it's
Yes.
like a way to seem like, oh my gosh, I'm down to earth and really cute. Like I think that
Mhm.
some of those like, I mean, they basically are like rhetorical moves. It's like some of those things are meant to convey a certain quality about us. Um,
Mhm.
so I think it's like really important, like not to just have your gallery speak for themselves. I mean, even if they're like amazing, and I'm sure I'm like for the
Mhm.
photographers listening, I'm like I'm sure you're like amazing, but making sure to have that context and that copy there. Like I always like to advise photographers, and what I will do on photographer sites a lot is like even if we're going to have their like portfolio page, like, oh, we're going to have galleries, we're going to lead to galleries, I really like to have at least some copy there. I mean, one, that's good for SEO. Like, if we have no text
Yeah.
on the page, like sometimes it can be, I'm not saying you can't rank because you might be able to like, tag your images a certain way. So I'm not saying you can't, but having copy on the page, it's like another one of those like factors that like just
Mhm.
is like another point in your favor for Google. So it's like having that text there is important. It's good to like optimize with, the right keywords. But I also like to encourage photographers to use that as a space to like really talk about their work. Like, who do they work with and what characterizes their work? And sometimes things that seem like obvious to you that it's like, oh, of course, I approach this way when I take my photos, and maybe even another photographer can look and see that. You have to remember,
Mhm.
like, talking to people that like, especially like if you're, say like a wedding photographer, and it's like they're planning their first wedding and they don't really know they have
Yeah.
no idea. And so that might seem really obvious to you, but that's not going to be obvious to them. And, having it there to be able to like cue that in their mind where they're like, oh, wow, okay, like I'm seeing that feels like really consistent with what I'm seeing. It's like letting the words and the visuals really match and support each other. And it's just another, point in your favor on your website.
Yeah, that's so true because there's a lot of times I'm in like photography forums and everyone's like, "Can you guys take a peek at my website and tell me if there's anything I should like not have or add or whatnot?" And it's like, you're really missing the mark because you're asking other photographers and they're all looking for the same thing. And really what you need is an audit from someone who's not a photographer but looking for a photographer because there's things that you might say or not say that are something that you're totally missing the mark on. It's so true. And yeah, that's where it's like someone other than your mom use so to speak. Like that used to be a thing where it was like, have your mom go through this and then have a friend go through this. And you know, you need someone that's like kind of like a client to go through it and kind of say, like, this doesn't make sense to me. Especially when you're looking at something over and over and over again. Like you just need another set of eyes that's not in your industry to take a peek.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes it's just so easy to like I posted about this on Instagram the other day and people were saying, "Yeah, oh my gosh, I totally agree." Like, sometimes we're just like way too close to see
Mm,
things outside of ourselves.
yep.
Like I think the nice thing about, I always tell my clients with like I think the nice thing about working with a copywriter is like they're like, I mean, it's like I look at websites every day, like so many times
Mhm.
a day. I write them, I work with them, I work with web designers. So I'm very like when I go to websites and it's bad, I'm like, ooh, but
Yes.
but yeah, no, it's like someone like that. Also someone, like who works with, creative entrepreneurs who's like very like adjacent to this. It's like I know
Mm,
some things in the industry, but I'm also like outside the industry as well. So it's like, someone who doesn't know you, but who like works with websites a lot, who can be like, oh, I see it. And they can just like laser right in on what it is. Like sometimes we're
yeah,
just too close to our businesses and we're just like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. And someone might be able to look and go, oh, okay, yep, there it is. And they'll just be able to see it. And that
for
can help
sure.
a lot.
I kind of attribute it to like when you go to someone else's house and you see the things like the cobwebs in the corner or like the things that are there, like that have become just a permanent thing that you just become accustomed to in your own home. And until someone points it out, you really don't know that it's like a problem or that it's there and people are wondering why. And it it's definitely one of those things where I'm like, okay, I can go into someone else's home and notice something and they can come into mine, but I've just learned to live with it and it just seems like a standard thing. So I think about that in our website where you're like, it's just always there. Like, why wouldn't I keep that there? But yeah, until someone points it out to you, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's kind of talk about the process when you're working with someone for copywriting. Like, what is that process from when they come and find you to when you start writing their copy to when their website is published? So what does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I have, a couple different ways people work with me, but I'll kind of talk about it like from a messaging point of view. I really like to work with people and like really starting fresh, like getting to know them. So, like, yeah, they're filling out a questionnaire, we're doing a call. I'm really looking at things like from more of like a holistic messaging standpoint.
Mm,
So instead of just starting like on the page of the website, I'm really stepping back and thinking about their brand, and I'm thinking about what makes them different and how can we make them stand out. And something I do with a lot of my projects too is I'm like interviewing past clients of theirs to see what they loved about
mm,
working with them, because I always find people might go like, oh, like why do you need to do interviews? I mean, I've done this with business owners who even have like a lot of testimonials, and we even
mhm.
find new things in the interviews, um, new insights, new like
Oh
things
yeah.
that they might be saying to me, like kind of like a third party, that they'll say different things or answer questions differently or elaborate on something where maybe their Google review was just like a short little thing. And I always find patterns, so I'm like doing interviews with their past clients, I'm looking at their testimonials. And so I'm really trying to be at the intersection of like, what did people love about working with them, like what is so great about their business, but then also you know what is their vision? What do they really want to come forward with? Like what are their goals? I always try to be very goal oriented too, and thinking
Mm,
about like what is this messaging here to accomplish? Who are we really
mhm,
targeting this at? So we're really going back to the beginning and thinking about those foundations and like positioning them as like a brand, as a business, before we write the website copy. And then it's like by the time we get to the website copy with that messaging done, I'm doing SEO keyword research. So I'm going really in depth and looking at, not just their website, but like their peers,
mm,
other people in the industry, like recommended keywords, like what could work really well. So it's like it's optimized. We're looking at what
mm.
clients are saying. We're thinking about their vision. We're making it very goal oriented. And then it's like the copy that we have is like just so structured for
Mm,
success because every
yeah.
step is so intentional leading up to that. And then it's like, they're able to go out there with a website that, will give them like such confidence, but it's also going to bring in the right people too.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say like the whole review process and interviewing because I think like as a business owner who wants to attract new people, you want raving reviews. You don't want something that's not raving, you know? And so we're trying to catch them at a point where they're super excited. So whether it be like right after they get a gallery or something like that. And I think the interview process is so good because you've given them time to process and then they're looking at a truthful mindset, not like we just want to help this photographer out because we love working with them, but they're not going to sit there and talk about their pain points in a in a review that they're trying to help them with, you know? And so I think that's such a good thing because you can say, well, where did you struggle? Where did you um what did you find useful? Whatnot? And so I think even giving them time after the fact or coming back to them later, you kind of find more truthful answers.
Yeah,
For
that's such
sure.
a good point. Yeah, I love that because sometimes in reviews, and it's like, yeah, we love the raves where people are like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, this was incredible. Like, this made me cry. Like, we always see those kind of like
Yeah.
testimonials, and like, that's great and everything. We love it. And, we do use those on your website. But at the same time, yeah, I do talk to them as well, kind of seeing like, were there any hesitations? Where did you
Mhm.
find them? How did you find them? What was that interaction like? Trying, yeah, getting that intent as well at the beginning of the process, and just kind of like, getting the full picture.
Yeah. And I'm going to kind of go on a tangent here, but I think about like when like a lot of people will say, and I see this a lot in forums again, where they're saying like, "Oh my gosh, this person left a really bad review. This is what they said. How do I get this removed?" And I always think about it as an opportunity because think about it when you're going shopping for something, you're not looking through the good reviews. The first thing you're doing is looking at the bad reviews, you know? And so you want to know like, well, what was bad about it? And then when you see maybe it was something that was totally like perspective or the person just it was that person speaks for themselves, you're going to see the reaction piece. And I always say it's how you respond to that bad review that speaks more highly of yourself. Um and it's definitely because I'd rather have that and then me come out on top where I'm like, I did everything I can to make this right, to give you the best service possible. Was this just something that you were never going to be pleased with? Or was it something that I did wrong? So, yeah, it's just kind of like one of those things as we talk about reviews. Um, I know that's not the purpose of our interview today, but just kind of throwing that in there. Um, so, what are some ways when copywriting that you find the voice of said photographer or the person that you're writing for? Like, what are some ways that you do that so that it sounds more like them? Is that something that you're doing a lot of, or is it not?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to do that. I've just found like the more I've worked with clients, I just, you know, this sounds like so vague, but like I think I've gotten to a point with clients where like I know what to ask and I know what to look for, and I just kind of
Mm,
like can look for the patterns, like, you know I know sometimes people don't have, people fill out questionnaires and they just do a call. I like to have people fill out that questionnaire. It's a starting point. Some like
Yeah.
it kind of tells me something about them too, because if they go like really, really long in the questionnaire, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, it tells me something about them. Or if they go a little bit shorter, that might tell me like this is the kind of person who can just like talk all day, but maybe they're not like,
Mm-hmm.
writing it as much. Like I definitely get different kinds of people, so that can tell me something. Being on the call and really going through different things, that can tell me something about them. Looking at their images, I feel like their Instagram, sometimes like if people have podcast episodes or videos, or I do also like to look at press features for people, like if they've been featured in
Mm.
Brides, or Over the Moon, or something like
Yeah.
that. I like to go look at those press features and kind of see like, what they're quoted as, or what are people saying about them. I think also talking to their clients is great too, because then I can get an idea, if people are like, they're so nice, they went above and beyond, and here's a story about how they did that or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so many things. It's like, the more I've worked with clients, the more I've been able to just like know what to ask and what to look for, to be able to understand like what is it that
Yeah.
makes them, them, as far as like their business and how this is going to work in copy. And also kind of like interrogating too, like when people say
Yeah.
like, sometimes, yeah, no, that sounds like so intense, but sometimes when people say things like, I want to sound really luxury, I'm like, okay, what does that mean to you? Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I do, well, always, I make sure to understand like what people mean when they say, oh, I want to sound luxury, or I want to sound elevated, or I want to sound high end. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I think what that sounds like to me is like you do want people who are going to, pay a more premium price for your service. Maybe you're looking to book less clients. Like you're wanting people that like really respect photography as an art. Like that may not tell
Yeah.
me a lot about the writing, because that can look a lot of different ways. It's like I was talking about earlier, like there's different types of writing that, have their moments. Like I think I was talking about that like super, super casual, I like snacks kind of writing. I think on the other end, we can go to the other end where like something I've seen that's very trendy in the wedding industry is like to be very like, you speak in third person and you're like, so and so is a renowned photographer, who's shot all over the world, and it's very like fancy. It's like fancy, and it's very it's like using big words, and it's third person,
Mm-hmm.
very removed, and it's like, it's not that that can't work, but I think it's like, there's like a time and a place for it, and it's also like striking the right balance. I think we can go too far in either direction.
Yeah.
And it's like making sure that we, really know where we're trying to go, and also kind of knowing, yeah, like what does elevated and luxury like mean to that person, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, it is their website, and I do want to help them like, like live out that vision as well. Like do want them to sound like how they want to sound, and that, that is going to be different for each person.
For sure. Yeah. And definitely like luxury, I feel like is more subjective,
Mhm.
because like what luxury means to one person is different for another. And so, yeah, that can be so many different things. Doesn't mean you
Yeah.
can't use it, but it does mean something totally different. So, doing that homework is a
I
lot,
always
but
ask.
also, yeah.
I always ask, because I never know, people might show me something and go, I think this is luxury, and I'm like, oh, okay, because in my mind maybe it would have been like something else. So it's
Oh,
one of
yeah.
those things that's like so relative, that I always make sure to know what that is, so then when they kind of see like a first look of what I've been working on, they're not like, what is this, what's going on? I make sure we're on the same page about what
Mm-hmm.
really means, and what, like what we would consider like,
For sure.
successfully conveying luxury. Because I think too, it can really depend on like what markets you're in, um
Mm.
where you're working in the country, in the world, like who are your ideal clients, how much are your services, how are you as a person? Because if you're like very formal and posh, like maybe we do want it to sound that way, but if you're like so chill and laid back, but like still like high ticket as well, like there's a way to strike that balance too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of talk about like ways that someone can highlight their services a little bit more, like on their website. Like, what are some suggestions for ways to do that well with copy?
Yeah, so I think something that can work well with photographers, I mean, there are a couple ways that, this can be accomplished because, I always ask my clients, do you want to show prices? Do you want to hide prices? I always recommend
Mm,
having a starting price because I think that helps you kind of like save,
mhm.
your time. You're not like spending time on people that like are just not going to be able to afford that.
Yeah.
You can also like if you want to keep specific pricing and you're going, oh, certain things are custom, like you can keep that a little bit behind the wall if you want to, but I think starting prices are really great. Something that I always recommend is like really focusing on the experience. Like often what I will do, like sometimes photographers want to have those like collections or packages like after they inquire. So more of those like getting a little bit more granular about what is included and how many hours of coverage,
Mm,
all of that stuff.
sure.
Can do that post inquiry. I think it can be great to have it on the website, but I think the most important thing is really getting into the experience and making sure it's very clear, like what it actually is like to work with you. What are they coming away with? Like, how are they going to feel? What's going to be taken off their hands? Why you? Why should they move
Yeah,
forward with you?
for sure. For sure. No, that's good. And I think everyone always has that question like, should I have pricing on my website? Should I not? And it really comes down to like, how many people do you want to have inquiries with? And
Yeah.
how much do you want? Like, do you want to have inquiries that you say no to? Or do you want to just like be upfront and only get the inquiries that are super serious after they've read your website? And a lot of that comes down to like, how well is your website written to like explain and basically, because I know for me personally, like by the time I have a meeting with someone, they pretty much want to book before they even have the meeting. It's just they're going through the formalities, which is helpful for saving my time because I don't want to go through and like handhold every single potential client. I want to pick the ones that just really want me, but not every photographer is in a place where they can do that, where they're just like, I just need to know if people are seeking me out right now. And so that's so true. Um, let's kind of go in. We're going to kind of take a pivot here because something you offer are quizzes on websites. And
Yeah.
I'm just so fascinated by this because at one point I really wanted to do it. And then I realized I needed to buy a plugin and like pay a monthly fee and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, maybe I'm not ready for that yet. And then I just kind of lost interest. But knowing that we were going to talk about this today, I'm like, oh, I really want to get back to this. So let's talk about why you should consider a quiz and then why we should have one in general. Let's kind of go into that.
Yeah, quizzes are like so fun and so interactive. Like, I always say like I've been like posting this on Instagram lately and I'm like not to shoot down any like, quote boring PDFs because I'm like I have one right now as I'm working on my quiz. I'm like my quiz
Yeah.
is coming out soon. No, but I think quizzes are great because they can convert higher than regular lead
Mm,
magnets, like where people might see it and be like, oh, another PDF. Okay, bye.
mm-hmm.
Like that might just feel like something that they've seen before. Quizzes are really fun because, especially if you've got like a really good hook on it, a really good angle, it's kind of
Yeah.
fun. People are like, oh, I'm curious to see what the answer to this question is. This is compelling to me. I'm going to go like answer these, 8 or 10 or 12 questions and
Mm-hmm.
get this really personalized result. Like, it's a lot more personalized. Like you can serve them up a very specific solution. You can really provide value on those landing pages, like once they take the quiz.
Yeah.
And then it's like you can do a couple different things with a quiz. Like you can just get people on your list and nurture them. You can sell within the funnel. You can offer, you can even offer like upgrades onto your quiz. Like, I mean, kind of a tripwire or an additional product that might like further their experience.
Mm,
You can try to get them to schedule a consultation call with you. So there's a couple things that you can do just to kind of like really serve the people that are coming to your website and really be memorable, get them in your community and have them going, wow, that was like so interesting. It gave me so much value.
mm.
And, you can follow that up with a nurture sequence and really just like bring people into your world a little bit more. And I think like in the era of selling that we're in, like, I think that we are coming out of an era where I think we were able to like coast a little bit more and not have to do as much like direct selling.
Yeah.
We're definitely at a point where, direct selling is just becoming like more and more important.
Mm,
And, if you've got that website up and running and, it's working for you, but you also want to bring more people in, I, a quiz can be really helpful for that. And it's just, it's interactive, it's super easy, it's fun, and, it's it's not high stakes, but it's providing high value.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I love that because I love that idea of like getting someone on your list with that too, bringing more people in. But there are so many different funnels you can use with it. I thought about one time doing one like how to know how to pick your color scheme for your family session. Back when I was doing families, I was like, how cool would that quiz be? Like, how do I know what I want? Like, what does your house look like? That kind of thing. So that was a lost cause, but a little idea out there if anyone's interested. But what kind of quizzes do you recommend for photographers? Do you have any specifics where you're like, well, this would be a really cool idea, or trends that you're seeing?
Oh gosh, I think it would like so depend on the person. I really like to be, as
Mm,
customized with them as possible. I really like to hear about. I think it depends on your goals. Like definitely something to focus on is like what your goals are. Is it to I mean, you can grow your list, I think no matter what your goals are. Is it primarily to grow your list? Is it to, if you're someone that's like moving into more education or coaching, is that a goal?
mm,
Is it like you're wanting to serve value to couples up front and maybe like nurture them, or try to get them to book a call or something like that? I think that would be dependent on where you're looking getting them to buy, or what you're
yeah,
getting
sure.
them kind of into, so making sure it's like really really focused on that. And then something really key with quizzes too is really like nailing the segmentation. So what I mean by
Mm,
that is making sure that like we have all these different results, or landing pages that we have for each one. So we really want to make sure that like not only is the angle of the quiz like really good, sharp people go, ooh, I want to know the answer to that question, but then also like the result that they're getting, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so me, that's so accurate, I feel like this is
yeah,
exactly, this is really resonating with me. So making sure that when we're kind of planning out what the landing pages are, what the results are, like you're thinking about that even before you're thinking about the questions and answers. You're thinking about like what what result is it leading to, like where are we actually looking to take them. So thinking about that pathway
yeah,
first is going to be like really really important.
yeah, for sure. So is that something that you like customize, or is that something where like people buy a template from you and like make it themselves, or is it both?
Yeah, well, right now it's customized. So I actually did last year. I did a quiz certification. So I'm certified to write quizzes. I took a quiz
Fun.
course from like a really recognized quiz writer who's written quizzes
Okay.
for like some of the like top industry
Yeah.
creators. And so I really learned. I was like, this is a skill I really want to learn. I really want to add this to my tool belt because you know website copywriting, sales copywriting, brand messaging is something I've been doing for a long time. And I'm like, quizzes are just such an opportunity to provide such value and, make sales and bring more people into your list. I'm going like, I feel like people are sleeping on quizzes. We need them. I wanted to give my clients this a little bit more. So it's something that like I practiced and got certified in. And so, right now it's like custom. Um, and I think again it's like really focusing on the goals and really thinking
Yeah.
about what are we trying to do. I really try to make it as personalized as possible. Something that I've been doing is like a new thing is like a quiz VIP day. I work with people to get their quizzes done really fast so that
Oh,
because I think that the big struggle point, a lot of people just don't know what their quiz is going to be about. They're like, I'd love to
yeah,
have one, but what the heck is it going to be
for
about? And
sure.
it's like, you don't necessarily have to know that. It's something that we can figure out. So I think that that can be a big struggle, is like knowing what your quiz is going to be about, and then also like making sure those landing pages are like really really awesome, where people are like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah. I actually really love that because, yeah, like not being cookie cutter and it being like specific to you and your brand and like what you offer. Um, it's just it's a much better thing than to just be like someone else, you know? Um, so ah, I love that. What is one of this is like totally putting you on the spot, but what is one that you can think of that was like really fun to create? Like, what did that
Yeah,
involve?
I did a fun one for a web designer recently. Like she's about to launch it. Like her quiz is about like it's actually for photographers actually. So I'm excited for this
No.
one. So she's a
Oh, I
web
gotta go
designer
look
for
for it.
photographers, and so we really like created the quiz around like helping people like find their passion in their business and really making
Mm,
sure that like they're kind of going back to that foundation and finding out like what are they passionate about in their business. It's kind of for people who are like they've been in business for a while and they're like, oh, like I'm feeling a little frustrated or what do I do now? And it's like
Yeah,
helping them like fall back in love with their business and do things that are going to like put them on the path to like making their business more like what they want it to be.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Now we're all going to be looking for it.
I know. Like I
um,
wish it was out. I would
oh my
totally use
goodness.
it.
Too funny. Um, so let's kind of talk about, so you had a um client that came back to you at one point and was talking about how once you worked with them, they had made 60 or 20, 26, not 60, 26. This is still a lot. Inquiries in 1 month just from the change of the copy change. They noticed that was a major increase. So kind of tell us about that.
Yeah. So this is a client I worked with last year. So I worked with her like in the what was that, like kind of the spring, and she launched her site in the summer, which is super interesting. And then yeah, she said like within 1 month of like posting that website with the new copy and everything, she got those 26 inquiries. And it's like I was saying before this podcast, Kara, like she was doing like pretty well in business. Like she wasn't doing badly in business or anything, but this was definitely like a huge month for her where she was like shocked that she got that many inquiries in a month. Like that was like
Mhm.
uncommonly high. Like especially for that like particular like time of the year. So yeah, that was like such a exciting win for her to have.
Yeah, I love that because it's it's always like, how do I get more of this? How do I get more of that? And so I think photographers are always searching like how to get things quick. And that's the hard part is like with website copy too, like you got to let the SEO work. And sometimes we're in this like microwave society where everyone's like, well, I need to bring in clients now. And it's like, you got to think of the long haul. And what is going to be something that you write today that could make an experience and create a new client for like down the road. So I love that.
Yeah, longevity is really important. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think too with strategies, because I think this can be something we're all guilty of. I know even I do this sometimes where I'm like, oh, something isn't working, like I need to just give up and turn around. And it's like, I think sometimes we have to like it's like keep showing up and keep putting in that
Mhm.
work. I think sometimes like it is hard to see that like sometimes we don't see that immediate success. Sometimes it does take a little bit more time or we go through slow periods. And you know I've thought about this a lot. Like, I feel like in my time in business, I've seen plenty of times where, like, sometimes it'll be slow and I'm like, where is everybody? Like, I'm not even getting emails or anything.
Yeah.
And then the next day I'll get like three inquiries and, oh, here's, 10K, like popping out of nowhere,
Yeah.
proposals getting signed and stuff like that. So it's like, it happens sometimes. And it's like, I think that there's some like real value in like showing up and keeping up
Yeah.
with it and maintaining those things and yeah, allowing things to work. I think because I know Carrie, you just mentioned about SEO. That's another thing is like sometimes it takes Google, like it can really vary with how much time
Hmm.
it takes for like SEO to kind of get indexed.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've seen it happen faster than others, and then sometimes like I remember there was a time last year where I had written like a handful of blog posts and I'm like, why are they not indexing on Google? What is happening? It just took them so long to like hit and be like,
Yeah.
oh, yep, now they're showing up for that query. It just took a while for whatever reason. Like sometimes, the your copywriter, SEO people, like even we're like, I don't know. Sometimes Google just has some like mischievous ways, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's like SEO is really great. Longevity.
Yeah. No, that's good. I love that. Okay. So we're going to go kind of maybe off topic a little bit, but what is your favorite thing to write, whether it be websites or not? But as a writer, what is your favorite thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm having so much fun with quizzes lately. I'd love to do more of them because they're just so much fun. And the process for writing them is so different from how I do website copy. But something I also really love to do, I love writing brand messaging guides for clients. Like, I just
Oh,
find that is just so, kind of that pre-step before website copywriting, or sometimes I've written them for people and they're kind of going and using those and going, okay, how do I want to speak on social media, or what are
Yeah.
my talking points as a business? I love doing that. I really love going back to that foundation and thinking about like, how can we make this person stand out? What are
Mhm.
some key points that we can really highlight about them? How can we make sure people know and recognize these things when they're like landing and finding this business? So those are like both like really fun for me.
Love that. Yeah. Well, I have one more question for you before we end this. Where can we find you on the web and socials so that if someone is looking for copywriting for their website, they can find you?
Yes, call me. No, don't call me. You can find me at so my website is theliterary.co, so not .com. So it's theliterary.co, and it's the same on Instagram.
Awesome. And you can find the Cameras and Coffee podcast at karahainsphotography.com/podcast, or you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Cameras and Coffee Podcast. Kayla, I'm so excited that you came on today. This was such a great conversation, stuff that fires me up and gets me excited as someone who is not the best writer, but needs little tips here and there and maybe help in the long run. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Kara. This was great.
Yes. So, for the rest of you listening, I'm going to catch you next time on the next episode. But until then, cheers.